I was the third lot of the morning, between a milk cow with a swollen udder and a cart of barley with the rot just starting at the bottom. The elders had not been clever about the order. They had been clever about the price. A bag of grain. That was what they opened the bidding at for me. 1 bag, dry weight, second harvest. The auctioneer said it twice, because he could not believe the elders had let him. I was 23 years old, an omega, out of the eastern villages, and the only reason I was on the auction block in Stonebridge that morning was that my younger brother had vanished from our hearth 6 nights before. I had walked the road to Stonebridge because the rumour was that men in this village had been taking omegas from the road and selling them cheap. And I had wanted, in the way of older sisters everywhere, to look those men in the face before I decided what to do with them. I had walked into the wrong inn. I had been recognised as an omega within an hour. I had been on the block within 2 days. That was on me. The elders of Stonebridge did not abduct me. They acquired me through what they believed was the proper process. 3 days held in a back room of the inn, 3 meals a day, no questions answered. And then this, a bag of grain. It was the auctioneer who could not look at me. The elders looked at me fine. There were perhaps 40 people in the market hall. Most were local. Farmers, the cooper, 2 women I think were the cooper's wife and her sister. Some were merchants. 6 were elders of Stonebridge, seated on the raised wooden bench at the back like a row of crows. The last few were the kind of men who came to country auctions for the reasons you would imagine. One of them was bidding. He had been bidding on the milk cow too. He had not won the cow. He intended, I gathered, to win this. He was the village butcher. He was the head elder's cousin. I had been told this by the inn girl who had brought me bread that morning, with the kind of warning a young woman gives another young woman when there is nothing else she can do. The butcher raised his hand for 2 bags of grain. The auctioneer called it. There were no other bids. There would not be any other bids. The elders had set the price low because they did not want other bidders. The whole thing was theatre, paperwork performed in front of 40 witnesses, so that what was about to happen to me would be, technically, the way these things were done. The auctioneer raised his hammer. "Going once," he said. His voice was tired. I had decided, on the 3rd morning in the back room of the inn, that I would not weep on the block. I would meet the eyes of every elder. I would commit each of their faces to memory. If I survived this, and I had not by that morning decided that I would, I wanted to know exactly who I was looking for later. I was looking at the head elder when the doors of the market hall opened. The light from the square came in behind a tall figure and 3 smaller ones. Travel cloaks. The crest on the collars, half hidden, half not, was the iron wolf of the high seat. I saw it before anyone else did, because I had been the one with nothing to look at but the door. The auctioneer's hammer did not come down. He was looking at the door. The head elder was looking at the door. The butcher had turned in his seat, because in the borderland villages you turn when the door opens. Bad weather and worse men tend to come in from doors. The tall figure in the lead pushed back his hood. I have been told a great many things about the first time someone sees the Alpha King. The version the bards sing is that he is a thing of dread. The version the kitchens tell is that he is taller than the door of any room he enters, which is a thing technically true of all very tall men, and dramatic of none of them. The version no one had told me was that he could walk into a room and stop the air. 40 people stopped breathing. The auctioneer's hammer hung above the block. The head elder's mouth opened and then closed, because he had been about to greet the king in some prepared way, and had then realized that the king had walked in during a particular moment, in a particular hall, looking at a particular thing. The king was looking at me. He looked at me for what felt like a long time. It was probably the count of 3. Then he said, very evenly, "What is the bid?" The auctioneer made a sound. It was not a word. "What," said the king again, "is the bid?" 2 bags of grain, my lord," said the auctioneer. He did not look at me. He did not look at the king. He looked at the floor between them. The king considered this. 2 bags of grain, he repeated. "Yes, my lord." "For the woman on the block?" "Yes, my lord." "From whom?" The butcher stood up. He had the sense, at least, to stand up. "Master Aldred, my lord," said the auctioneer. The king looked at the butcher. He did not say anything to the butcher. He did not need to. He looked at him for the count of 3, the same way he had looked at me. And the butcher sat back down with the speed of a man who had decided very late in life that he would prefer to be a smaller and quieter version of himself. The king turned back to the auctioneer. "My bid," he said, "is the keep of Iron Hall, its lands, its taxes, its banner, and every coin in its treasury." The market hall did not make a sound. "Going twice," said the king. Nothing in his voice had changed. He had not raised it. He had not made it cold. He had said it the way a man reads a list. The way a man would say, "The kitchen needs salt." "That," said the head elder, finding his voice from somewhere, "is not, my lord, that is not a registered bid. The form of the auction—" "Sold," said the king to the auctioneer. The auctioneer brought the hammer down. The alternative was unimaginable, and the moment it cracked against the block, I felt every breath in the room come back at once. The king walked the length of the market hall. He did not look at the elders. He did not look at the butcher. He stopped at the foot of the block, and he held up one hand to me, palm up, fingers loose, the way a man asks rather than the way a man takes. "Will you step down?" he said. "Yes, my lord," I said. I took his hand. I stepped down. He turned to the bench of elders and said, "The terms of the bid will be discussed at sundown, in your hall. I will bring witnesses. You will, all 6 of you, be present." He did not wait for them to agree. He did not need to. We left through the same doors he had come in through. The light of the square was bright enough to hurt. My legs did not entirely belong to me. The king walked at my side at a deliberate pace, half a step slower than his natural one, which I would not register until much later, and at the edge of the square his 3 companions fell in behind us. One of them was carrying a bag of grain. I had not noticed who picked it up. I would not, until that night, register the meaning of the fact that it had been picked up at all. The king had bought me for 2 bags of grain, or, technically, for the keep of Iron Hall and everything inside it, but he had paid the recorded price. One of the men who came in with him had set the sacks on the auctioneer's table and picked them up again on the way out, because there was a piece of paper in the records of Stonebridge that said the king of the Iron Territories had paid 2 bags of grain for me, and the king did not want that piece of paper out there alone. He carried the sack himself once we were out of the square. I watched him do it. I did not say anything. We rode to Iron Hall in a closed carriage because the king had decided, somewhere between the market and the carriage, that I had been looked at by enough people for one morning. I sat across from him. The 3 companions rode alongside. The grain sack sat on the seat beside the king, because there had not been anywhere else to put it. He did not look at me for the first quarter hour of the ride. He had not yet decided what to say. The version of him that had walked into the market hall had been very clear about what he was doing. The version of him sitting across from me in the carriage was somewhat less clear, and was, I noticed with a fascination I tried not to show on my face, beginning to be quietly horrified at the version of himself that had done it. "My lord," I said, when the silence had reached the point of being its own sentence.
"Yes." "You have just bought me at auction."
"Yes."
"In front of 40 witnesses."
"Yes."
"Including the head elder of Stonebridge, who will tell the story for the rest of his life."
The king looked out the carriage window. "Yes." "My lord," I said, "I am not certain you have thought this entirely through." He looked at me. He looked at me for the count of 3. "No," he said, "I have not." He said it without irony and without apology. "I would like to know what you intend," I said. "To unmake it," he said. "My lord." "What was done in that hall this morning will be unmade by sundown. The auction will be voided. Your name will be removed from the ledger. The elders will pay a fine the village cannot afford. The inn that took you in will be closed by my order. The only people in the borderland villages who will be permitted to remember what happened this morning are the ones who saw it. And the ones who saw it will be told to forget." He paused. "And then I will need to determine," he said, "what to do with you, because I have just bought you in front of 40 people, and the thing I have done cannot be entirely unmade by paperwork, no matter how much paperwork I have at my disposal." "You could send me home," I said. He looked at me. "Is there a home," he said, very carefully, "to send you to?" I thought about my brother, vanished from our hearth 6 nights ago. I thought about the eastern village, where the men were too few since the last raid, and the omegas too many since the last harvest. I thought about the road I had walked, 3 days alone, with a knife I had been brave enough to use only on the second man who looked at me wrong. "Not exactly, my lord," I said. He nodded once. "I thought as much." He did not elaborate. He did not press. He looked back out the window. "My lord," I said. "Yes?" "What is the bag of grain doing on the seat?" He looked at the sack. He looked at it like he was seeing it for the first time, although I knew very well he had been aware of it the entire ride. "I have not decided," he said. "You could put it on the floor." I could. He did not put it on the floor. I made a note of that. I realized as I made the note, in the process of becoming a woman who made notes about the king of the Iron Territories. This was not a thing I had set out to do that morning. It was happening anyway. If you have stayed with me to hear,
Stay a little longer. I have not yet told you what the king did with the grain sack when we reached his hall, and I have not yet told you what he handed me in his library that night, and I have not yet told you which noble lady at the high table decided, somewhere between the carriage and the hall, that I was going to have to disappear before the next moon. If you would like to know how all of that went, the small button below the candle will keep us together for the rest of it. Iron Hall was larger than I had let myself imagine on the ride. I had seen the King's Keep in stories grandmothers tell to keep children at the hearth, and I had assumed, the way you assume about things you have only seen in stories, that the real thing would be smaller. It was not. He walked me through the main hall without ceremony. He did not present me. He did not announce me. He took me down a corridor I did not know the geography of yet, opened the door of a library, and closed it behind us. He set the grain sack down on a side table near the door, not the floor, the table. "Sit," he said. He nodded at one of 2 chairs by the hearth. The fire had been built up already. Someone in this hall knew their king well enough to know that he would come here first. I sat. He went to a writing desk near the window. He picked up a sheaf of papers that had clearly been waiting for him. He brought them to the chair opposite mine, and he sat down. 3 full paces away, the same distance I would later learn was the distance he kept from every woman who was not his blood. And he held the papers out to me. "Read these," he said. I took them. I read them. The first page was a freedom paper. My name had been written across the top in a clerk's careful hand. The body of the document set me at liberty. Full rights, full standing, no service obligation to any pack or holding, including his own. It was the kind of document that required a signature in 3 places to be valid. It had been signed in none of them. The second page was a letter of safe passage signed by the king himself, granting me unhindered travel across every road in his territories, with the seal of the high seat at the bottom in red wax. The third page was a deed. It was a deed to a stone house in the eastern villages, 2 doors down from the hearth I had grown up at, with a kitchen garden and grazing rights for 2 cows. The previous owner had been the village widow who had died the winter before last. The deed had been registered to me 3 weeks ago. I had not known. I looked up at him. "How long?" I said. "Have you had these papers ready?" "The freedom paper, 2 hours," he said. "I instructed it to be drawn during the ride to Stonebridge. The letter of safe passage, the same. The deed," he paused, "is older." "How old?" 3 weeks. "Why?" He did not answer. "My lord," I said. "Why?" He looked at the fire. "Because," he said, "your brother was brought to my hall 4 weeks ago by a baiter of the eastern border, who had pulled him out of a slaver's wagon 2 days from Stonebridge. The boy has been in my kitchens ever since. He is well. He is whole. He has been asking after his sister. I have known your name for 3 weeks. I have known where you lived for 3 weeks. The deed was an attempt, an inadequate one, to make sure that whatever became of you, you would not be standing on the road again." He stopped. "I did not," he said, "expect to find you on an auction block this morning. I had ridden into Stonebridge to settle a grain dispute. The dispute
as it turned out, was the cover for the dispute. I am still working through what I think about that. I looked at the third paper, the deed, to a stone house 2 doors from my own hearth, drawn 3 weeks ago by a man who had not, until that morning, ever met me. "My lord," I said.
"Yes. Why did you not sign the freedom paper before you came in here?" He looked at me. "Because," he said, "if I had signed it before I gave it to you, it would have been a gift from the man who bought you at auction. I did not want it to be that. I wanted it to be the paper you held when you decided whether to sign it yourself." He held out a pen. "You may sign it," he said. "I will leave the room while you do. The beater at the door will escort you to your brother. You may take the deed and the safe passage paper and the boy and ride east tomorrow morning at first light, with an escort I will provide. The auction will be voided. The elders will pay. You will never see me again if that is what you would like. That is the first option." I looked at the papers. "The second option," he said. He stopped. He looked at the fire for a long moment. Then he looked at me, and the iron in his face, the iron that had walked into the market hall and stopped the air for 40 people, was nowhere I could see. "The second option," he said, "is that you sign the freedom paper here, where I will witness it, and then you stay 1 night in this hall, as a free woman with a signed paper. As a guest, not as anything else. And in the morning, you decide whether you ride east or whether you remain, for reasons that would have to be your own." I sat with that. "My lord," I said. "Yes?" "You realize there is no second option that is actually neutral. If I stay 1 night, the entire hall will assume what they will assume. By morning, the story of the auction will have reached the high table. By the next morning, it will have reached the rival packs. You know this." He nodded. "I do. Then the second option is not what you are saying it is." "No," he said. "It is not. The second option is that you stay, and the consequences of you staying are mine to manage and not yours, which is the only version of the second option I am prepared to offer." I sat with that too. "My lord." "Yes?" "Why did you put the grain sack on the table?" He looked at the sack, then at me. "Because I have not yet decided," he said, "what to do with it." "What are your options?" "Burn it, bury it, have it weighed, and have its precise value in coin sent to every Omega household in the eastern villages, with a note. Keep it on this table for the rest of my life." I considered him. "The last one is dramatic, my lord." "It is," he said. "It is also the one you are going to choose, isn't it?" He looked at me. "I have not decided," he said. Then, after a beat, "Probably." I signed the freedom paper. I signed it in the second chair by his hearth, with his pen, while he stood at the window with his back to me, because he had said he would leave the room, and I had said he did not need to. I signed all 3 places. I handed it to him. He read it. He countersigned as witness. He set it down on the table next to the grain sack. I stayed the night. I was given a guest room with a door I could bolt from the inside. I bolted it. I slept. In the morning, I was brought breakfast by a kitchen woman who did not ask me anything and did not look at me the way I had expected to be looked at. I was brought also to my brother. He cried. I did not. I had cried enough on the road. I will tell you the rest of what happened in the hall before sundown, because that is when Lady Inga moved.
Lady Inga was the daughter of one of the king's standing advisers, and a woman who had, the kitchen woman told me very quietly while I ate, been understood for several years to be the most likely candidate for the king's eventual hand. The understanding was mostly hers. The advisers had encouraged it. The king had never confirmed it. But these things have momentum in great houses, and her momentum had been considerable. By mid-morning of my second day in the hall, Lady Inga had sent for the steward and informed him that as a friend of the king's house, she felt it was her duty to make sure the Omega from Stonebridge was properly looked after, and would the steward arrange for her to be escorted, with a small honour guard from Lady Inga's own family, to a holding in the south, where she could be cared for in privacy until the king had finished managing the political fallout. The steward, who had been steward of Iron Hall for 31 years, did what stewards of great houses do. He went immediately to the king. The king was in his library, looking at the grain sack. "Where," said the king, "my lord? Where would she be cared for? Which holding?" The steward, who later told me this part himself, said the king's voice had not changed. It had been the same voice he used to settle grain disputes. The steward named the holding. The king looked at the grain sack a moment longer. "That holding," he said, "has a high wall, no servants but Lady Inga's, and no road out that does not pass through her father's lands." "Yes, my lord." "Send the lady to me," said the king, "and send for the Omega from Stonebridge as well. I would prefer," he added, "that they be present at the same time." That is how I came to be standing in the library of the King of the Iron Territories at sundown of my second day in his hall, with my freedom paper in my hand, with my brother just outside the door, with the grain sack still on the table beside me, and with Lady Inga walking through the door in a dress the colour of new wine. She saw me. She had been expecting me. Her face did not move. I will give her that. The woman had bones. She greeted the king with the precise warmth of a woman who had been calculating that warmth for 10 years. He returned her greeting with the precise neutrality of a man who had been receiving such warmth for 10 years without responding to it. Then he turned to me. "This is the Omega you offered to relocate," he said to Lady Inga. He did not phrase it as a question. "My lord, I offered out of concern for her welfare. Yes, I have been told. I have also been told the holding you proposed. I have one question, my lady, and then you may go." Lady Inga went still. "Did you," said the king, "ever intend for her to leave that holding alive?" The library was very quiet. Lady Inga looked at him. She looked at me. She looked at the grain sack on the table, because everyone who came into that library that day looked at the grain sack. And she decided, the way women like her decide everything, that the cost of telling the truth was lower than the cost of lying to him in his own library. "No, my lord," she said. He nodded once.
"Thank you for not insulting me with the alternative answer," he said. "You will be on the road to your father's holding by midnight. You will not return to this hall. Your father will be informed that the offer of his daughter's company has been declined. He will accept it, because the alternative will be the loss of his standing at my high table. You may go." She went. I watched her go. When the door closed, the king looked at me. "You did not say anything," he said. "I did not need to." "No," he said, "you did not. I find that—" He paused. "I find that I am still working through what to do with women who do not need to say anything to be heard." I looked at him. I would like to tell you I had a witty answer ready. I did not. I had spent the morning being reunited with a brother I had walked 3 days to find, and the afternoon watching a woman who had wanted to bury me at the bottom of a southern garden be removed from a great house by a man who had not raised his voice once. I was, for the first time since I had stepped off the auction block, somewhat at a loss. "My lord," I said. "Yes?" "I would like to ride to Stonebridge with you at sundown." He looked at me. "You are free to do whatever you would like." "I know." "They are going to remember the second time they see you longer than they remembered the first." "I know," I said. "That is why I would like to come." He nodded once. "Then come." We rode to Stonebridge at sundown with 30 mounted warriors, the king's banner unfurled and a wagon behind us carrying the elder's fine and a clerk to record everything that would be said in the village hall. I rode beside the king. My freedom paper was in a leather case in my saddlebag. The deed to the stone house was in another. My brother was at the hall, asleep in the kitchen for the first time in a month. In my hands, across the front of my saddle, I carried a bag of grain. It was not the bag of grain. The original was still on the table in the king's library, where it would, in fact, remain for as long as I knew him. The bag of grain in my hands was a new one, drawn from the king's own stores, and the king had handed it to me himself at the gate of Iron Hall and had said only, "If you would like." I had taken it. I walked it into the market hall of Stonebridge that night. The elders were on their bench. The auctioneer was at the block. The butcher was at the back, looking smaller than he had looked the morning before. The king walked in beside me. I stepped forward. I set the bag of grain on the auctioneer's table. I looked at the head elder. "You sold me for less than a meal," I said. I said it quietly. The hall heard me. "I have brought it back. I would like the record cleared." The head elder looked at the king. The king did not look back at him. The king was looking at me. "Clear the record," he said to the clerk. The clerk did. The auction was struck from the ledger. The elders paid the fine, which was, to the coin, the assessed value of every elder's holding in Stonebridge, which the king had calculated on the ride. The inn was closed. The butcher was named in the record. The market hall emptied slowly, because no one in a borderland village leaves quickly when the king of the Iron Territories has just dismantled their council in front of them. The kiss came later. A quiet thing in the corridor of his hall, after my brother had been put to bed in the room across from mine, after the freedom paper had been countersigned a second time by his beater as additional witness, because the king wanted no question about it. After the grain sack on the library table had been moved exactly once, by his own hand, 3 inches to the left, so that it would catch the morning light. The kiss was an answer to a question I had not been asked in words. I will not tell you the shape of it. It was mine. 6 months later, I was Luna of the Iron Territories. My brother was being taught letters by the king's own tutor. The borderland villagers had a new market law that had been read aloud, by my request, at every harvest festival in the territory. Lady Inga's father had retired quietly from the high table. The grain sack was still on the library side table. The king had not moved it again. I had asked him once, after a winter feast, whether he ever intended to. "No," he said. "It is dramatic, my lord." "It is." "It is also a little ridiculous." "It is that too." He looked at me. "I am keeping it anyway. Do you know why?" I thought about it. I had walked into his library every evening for 6 months. I had seen the sack 100 times. I had stopped noticing it for a while, the way you stop noticing the chair in a room you live in. And then I had begun to notice it again. After I had understood, finally, why it was put there. "To remember what you almost did not stop," I said. He shook his head. "To remember what I did," he said, "and what it cost." He had paid the keep of Iron Hall, its lands, its taxes, its banner, every coin in its treasury. The elders had never collected on any of it. But the bid had been spoken in a market hall in front of 40 witnesses, and the king of the Iron Territories was the kind of man who, having spoken a bid out loud, meant it. I had not, on the morning of the auction, understood what I had been worth to him. I understood it now. "Tell me, when did you know? Was it the moment the king walked through the doors, or the moment he set the sack on the table? I want to know which beat undid you. Stay with me here. Subscribe if you would like her side of the next story. There is a noble daughter waiting on her own block, in a paler dress, and her story is the one I am telling next.